few weeks ago, I walked out of my house with Shai, my almost 3-year-old, to the car. Except the car wasn't there. It was gone. Despite the complete lack of signage, classic Philadelphia, my car had apparently been towed somewhere due to construction. "Walk 2 blocks this way," one person said when I asked where my car might be. "It'll be right down there, I promise." It wasn't there, so we circled back. "Oh, it's not there? Okay, they said it's definitely on 24th Street between Wharton and Reed. Go there." It wasn't there. Oh God, I thought, as I realized I was half a block ahead of Shai, running, and he was trying to keep up. "Mommy, Mommy!" I hadn't even realized that I was basically sprinting and his little legs couldn't keep up. Oh God, I thought, as we walked frantically from block to block, is he gonna pee his pants? He's definitely gonna pee his pants. We had just potty trained him the weekend prior. Really bad timing, really bad timing. Oh God, I thought, as I looked at the time. We'd left especially early, but the window to get him to daycare and me to something very rabbinically important was getting smaller and smaller. It felt bleak. There wasn't enough time. I didn't have enough energy. There wasn't enough of me in that moment to be a search party, a mom, and a rabbi all at once. We're living in a time where scarcity is a reality. Not enough affordable housing, not enough health care, not enough courage in our political leaders. Everything often feels like it's collapsing inward. Democracy, climate, even the basic capacity to talk to one another. And in a time where we're also told that love, friendship, each other is not enough. If you felt a constant background hum of "there's not enough," you're not imagining it. The feeling of scarcity is cultural, it's political, it's personal, it's everywhere. So there I was, stuck in my own scarcity spiral, this tiny, tiny scarcity spiral, when something cracked it open. A group of people doing yard work in our park spotted us racing around. "Are you looking for your car?" "Yes. I have no idea where it is. They said it's here. It's not. I'm running late. I really need a bathroom for him. Can he pee on this tree, you think? I really, really need to get to work." "Okay, stop. We'll help you find it." They all took off after I described my car to them. 2014, Hyundai Tucson, black, looks like a piece of junk. One of them hitting the alarm feature on my keys incessantly. 5 minutes later, I hear from the other side of the park, "We found it! It's over here!" This didn't make me any less late, or any less sweaty, or any less willing to encourage Shai to pee on the tree. But that scene reminded me that there's another kind of arithmetic running alongside scarcity. A math that doesn't add up neatly all the time, but somehow still works. I'll call it relational abundance. The kind that happens when other people in their messy, ordinary generosity interrupt the lie of scarcity and they say, "You're not doing this alone." The kind that happens when we say, "I need help." Our tradition doesn't deny scarcity. Our ancestors knew it intimately in so many ways. In just our Rosh Hashanah Torah readings alone, we encounter 2 women who had lived experiences of it, though in profoundly different ways. Sarah has lived decades with the ache of absence. The Torah puts it very, very bluntly. Hada likiyot l'sara orach hanashim. The way of women had ceased for Sarah. However we read that hard line about her body, about time, about the relentless waiting, we understand that she's aching. The path she once imagined seems no longer possible, or at least for her, no longer imaginable. And the text doesn't soften it for us, doesn't rush to reassure us with the miracle that comes later. It lingers in the reality of her pain. Hagar was cast out from Abraham's household with her son Ishmael, and she wanders into the desert with only a skin of water. When it runs dry, she places Ishmael, her son, under a bush, leaving him there to die, unable to watch him suffer. There is nothing abstract about this. Her story does not allow us to turn scarcity into metaphor. It's the most material of realities. No food, no water, no safety. But what strikes me about both of these stories, about both of these women, is that neither of them hide from this truth. Sarah laughs, and her laughter is complicated. It's bitter, incredulous, maybe even mocking God a little. It's the sound of someone who dares to name how absurd hope feels. And Hagar cries out. Her tears and her wails don't change her circumstances, but they refuse silence. Both women risk exposing what it means to be human in a moment when the world has fallen in around them. They reach for someone or something, for God. That's when we see abundance of different kinds break into these stories. A child is born, a well appears. But it's crucial to see what the text refuses to do here. Neither of these things erase what came before. The ache of Sarah's long years of waiting is not undone. Hagar's expulsion and the injustice of her treatment do not vanish. And the Torah doesn't resolve that tension, ever. Instead, it insists that life continues even in the wake of rupture. This is not a theology of silver linings, to be certain. But I hope a theology that names and holds loss without pretending it disappears. Abundance, when it comes, arrives in the middle of a broken story. It coexists with the pain that shaped the path to get there. And maybe that's what makes it real. Not an escape from scarcity, but a reminder that even in the desert, even after decades of disappointment, something can still be given and something can still grow. The risk then is not denying scarcity, but in telling the truth of it, in laughing, in weeping, in refusing to close down one's longing and not doing it alone. That risk doesn't guarantee repair, but it does make space for the possibility that life, fragile and unfinished, will still insist on itself. In today's Haftarah, we read from Jeremiah. And let me tell you, this guy is extremely audacious. The people whose city has been destroyed, whose leaders have been taken, whose lives feel hollowed out, he shares these words of God at the height of the worst moments. Az tizmach betula b'machol, uvachurim uzekenim yachtav, v'hafachti elam l'sason, v'nichamtim v'simachtim mikonam. Then shall maidens dance gaily, young men and old alike. I will turn their mourning to joy. I will comfort them and cheer them in their grief. It's honestly infuriating. Truly, it makes me seethe every time I read it. Joy, cheer, when everything is gone, when it's burning, when survival itself literally feels like a gamble. These words land in the middle of such severe pain. They're uninvited. They're impossible to ignore. But Jeremiah doesn't wait for conditions to improve. He doesn't say, okay, I know this whole exile thing sucks, but one day you'll feel better, I promise. He says, while the ruins are still smoldering, while the displacement and uncertainty are still raw. He reminds us that we persist even when everything feels broken. That small sparks of recognition and care can coexist alongside this despair. It's not optimism or spiritual gymnastics. It's about noticing that life and grief constantly coexist. That remembering being witnessed by a community, by history, by one another, is itself a kind of survival. It doesn't make loss vanish, but it insists that even in devastation, there are still registers of life that refuse to be canceled. Now, it's one thing to talk about Jeremiah's exile or Sarah's sadness or Hagar's wilderness, but it's another to talk about our own, for me to talk about mine. One of my closest friends, Devin, died last year of brain cancer. She'd been sick for a while. But her death was sudden. Many of us have had those kinds of deaths, unexpected. I met Devin when I was a freshman in high school, and I was lucky to know and love her into adulthood. Eric and I actually moved into our South Philly house because she wanted me to live close by. "You're gonna live near me," she said, "just 2 blocks away." Over the years, I got to watch her son grow from a tiny toddler into the 4-year-old he had become right when she died. Devin was the first person who showed up for me when I came home from the hospital with Shy, and she did it in the way she did everything: fully present, attentive, and with a warmth that made ordinary moments feel extraordinary. She even brought the magic swaddle that would make him sleep. Spoiler, it didn't. She had a brilliance and energy that made you feel more awake just by being near her. Sharp, witty, curious, generous, completely alive. She devoted herself to teaching and creating spaces where children could flourish, and she carried her friends, her community with her through that light. Her death was seismic. It left a rupture so profound that the world felt narrower and harsher, a loss that pressed in from every side and made even simple continuations of life feel tenuous. And yet, in that unbearable space, a few people, Devin's closest friends from all different walks of life, showed up for each other. On the day she died, we sat in the Interfaith Chapel at the hospital. We held hands, and I sang. My voice was creaky, but I risked it anyway. We couldn't change what had happened. We couldn't undo the rupture. We couldn't save her. All we could do was be present, hold one another, tell stories, sit in the dark together, laugh when I was a little off key, cry when it became too much. This small group of people, a couple I already knew, a couple I didn't, became what I needed to hold the grief. This group wasn't tidy, and it certainly was not a silver lining. It was survival, raw, unvarnished survival that only existed because a handful of people were willing to risk being vulnerable together. That tension between scarcity and human presence is something I live with daily, because the lessons of watching grief and care unfold in Devin's community are mirrored in a very different way in raising my own child. Watching a small network come together to carry loss made me realize just how much I depend on networks in ordinary life, in parenting and friendship, in day-to-day survival. And if I'm honest, my instinct, probably a lot of our instincts, are the opposite. My first response to stress or grief or responsibility in parenting and otherwise is scarcity thinking. I have to do everything myself. No one else will do this for him the way I do. If I don't show up perfectly, everything will fall apart. It's something I inherited as an eldest daughter. Eldest daughters here will understand. The unspoken charge to manage, to carry, to solve, to hold. The world feels safer if I'm the one keeping it together. But I keep getting proven wrong. As I've watched Shai grow for 3 years, I see him surrounded by more love than Eric and I could ever supply on our own. His aunts and uncles teach him games we might not make time for. Our friends cheer on his tiny victories, like when he scores a goal at the playground. His teachers correct his mistakes that were missing, and our neighbors indulge his absurd toddler sermons. What I've learned is that he thrives not because I or Eric are enough, but because there is enough to go around, a village of enough, and it's all right in front of us. Our relationship showing up again and again can make even the unredeemable survivable. It's the willingness to show up when it's hard, when it's painful, when it feels like nothing will ever be enough. And yet, somehow, through people willing to carry it with you, it is. Martin Buber, in his classic book, I Am Thou, describes 2 basic ways we relate to other people. The first he calls I-it. In an I-it relationship, we see the other person mainly as a means to an end, as someone or something that helps us get what we want. Most of our everyday interactions fall into this category. Buying something at the store, collaborating on a work project, even chatting with someone to get information or a favor. That doesn't make these relationships bad, they're just functional, they're practical, they're part of daily life. The trouble comes when we treat people purely as tools, using them for our own gain, without regard for them as human beings. The second kind he describes is I-thou. This is a very different level of connection. In an I-thou relationship, we encounter another person as a full human being, not as an object or a means to an end. We recognize their inner life, their dignity, their presence, what Buber calls the essential holiness of their soul. These moments, he says, are rare and precious. According to Buber, these kinds of encounters also become the way we experience God in the world, not as an abstract idea, but in the real lived encounter with another person. But I want to push back on Buber a little bit. I think building I-thou relationships, many of them, so many that they're not rare, are how we survive in a world that insists there's never enough. I think seeing the holiness in each other, taking relational risks, are how we fight against scarcity. Dean Spade, the legal scholar and activist, talks about mutual aid as the radical act of caring for each other while working to change the world. It encourages us to be in relationship with one another and to see that needs aren't a moral failing, they're systemic. It says, there's enough. As long as we coordinate, we show up and build networks that persist beyond any one act of generosity. Every gesture of care becomes a part of a living system. Renowned psychologist Judith Jordan's relational culture theory builds on this, and she emphasizes that human development and well-being don't happen in isolation. They happen only in relationship. Growth, resilience, and even healing emerge in the context of connections marked by mutual empathy, responsiveness, and authenticity. Care isn't a bonus or an optional extra. It's central, actually, to how we thrive. Showing up for one another, then, is more than kindness. It's a form of quiet resistance, a deliberate act that affirms human dignity in the face of forces that would have us go it alone. Don't get me wrong, grief, loss, and struggle are indeed isolating, and yet, time and again, people show up. Relational abundance isn't about erasing pain, it's about building enough care into the system that the pain doesn't crush us. Abundant love becomes infrastructure, a scaffold strong enough to hold sorrow and, at the same time, hope. Adrienne Marie Brown, Rav Adrienne Marie Brown to many of us, said on an episode of On Being, we live in this abundant world and we've been told that it is scarce and we're given all these stories of scarcity. What does it look like to imagine beyond the constructs? What does it look like to imagine a future where we all get to be there, not causing harm to each other and experiencing this abundance? Abundance isn't a fantasy or a luxury. It's practical. It's collective. It's how communities survive political, social, and emotional scarcity. Alone, scarcity wins. But together, we create enough. Enough care, enough resilience, enough love. It's in our moments of full presence when we risk seeing and being seen that we touch something sacred in one another. There's this Hasidic story about Isaac ben Yaakil from Krakow. One night, he dreams that a treasure is buried in a distant city, so he sets off to find it. He asks, he searches, he knocks on doors, meets strangers, and finally tells a guard about his quest. The guard listens and says, almost casually, that's funny. I dreamed a dream of a treasure too, buried under the stove of a man named Isaac ben Yaakil in Krakow. Isn't that you? Isaac goes home, digs under his own stove, and finds the treasure exactly where he started. The story is absurd and familiar. We spend so much of our lives looking elsewhere for enough love, enough care, enough hope, enough to believe in, when it's been under our feet all along. It's in the people around us, the people doing yard work in the park near your house when your car goes missing, in the moments when we hold hands with someone we just met who's experiencing the same loss, and the quiet gestures that keep a life from collapsing under its own weight. Look around the room for a moment at everyone here. We live in a world that constantly insists there is not enough. And yet I know from my year at Kol Tzedek, from my time with each of you, that abundance is right here. We are the treasure under each other's stove. Scarcity does not get the last word. Presence does. And here together, that presence is enough. Shana Tova.
We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within